What's going on, beautiful people? We're back again with another Mental Max Out podcast. And as always, this is Akeem Robinson. And I'm excited for you to be here. I hope this is not your first time, but if it is your first time, welcome aboard. Please don't leave, because every time we come on to this, it's just a way to think a little bit deeper, a way to think outside the box. And with that being said, what we're going to think about today is habits. How they happen. How do they get here? How do we create these good and bad habits? And hopefully by the end, I can give you some tips to get some better ones in your life. So I was cutting the grass. That is one of my top 3 things I cannot stand doing. And I really hate doing it, but I'm also a cheapskate and I will not pay someone to do it. So here I am cutting the grass. And it is one of those things where it has to be done. So in the middle of me cutting the grass, I noticed there was a weed. And I said to myself, I don't know when that got here, but I got to get it out. And so with me saying I got to get it out, I walked up to the weed and I started pulling. And I started pulling. And that thing would not budge. Next thing I know, I had to go to the garage, get something, dig in the ground. Now I'm on my knees. Now I'm pissed off that I'm on my knees. I'm sweating more because it's hot outside. Finally, 20 minutes later, I get it out. As I'm walking to the trash can in victory, I noticed the same leaves are on 5 more weeds. But the only difference is these weeds are significantly bigger and they are taller than me. And if you've ever seen me before, I'm 6'4", every bit of 260, and they were wider than me and taller than me. And I could not believe it. And something that took me 20 minutes actually took me the rest of my afternoon and a couple $100 because I had to go to Home Depot and get a shovel and get all these things. But that's not the point. The real point is habits are the same way. Without realizing it, we form our habits the same way in our daily routines. Problems come up. We often convince ourselves that these habits are bad, but we just ignore them. We just let them go. And like me, I let it go for so long that something that I thought was a 20-minute problem turned into an all-afternoon problem. The definition of a habit is a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up, or a usual way of behaving, something that a person does often or in a repeated way. So when you think about that and you understand this habit that you've created, what's that repeated behavior that you have continued to do? We allow habits to continue to grow until they're just a part of us. They become a part of our normal life. Looking at my yard, now that's how I've created some habits that I've ignored, that I'm not too proud of, but now they're there. You might be thinking to yourself, that isn't me. But hopefully, I can expose some of those things to make sure it is you, and we can work on changing those. One thing I can't stand besides cutting the grass is people calling me all the time because they think I'm a magic genie in losing weight. I am not that guy. Yes, I have helped thousands of college athletes. I have helped thousands of people lose weight, but I am not Jenny Craig. I am not this slim, fast person. And so when people call me and the first question they come out their mouth is, can you give me that workout plan? I can't stand it. I want to hang up on them, to be honest with you, but I don't. I calmly take a deep breath and I tell them no. And then they get kind of pissy, which I always expect. But to be honest, I'm actually doing them a service. I'm helping them out by telling them no, because after I tell them no, I say to them, what are your eating habits? When you go to the store, what's your favorite aisle? What's something that's in your pantry that you know shouldn't be there? And then guess what happens? The excuses. Well, I have these kids and they want the Cheetos and I can't help but grab the Cheetos too, man. No, the answer is still no. So after now talking to them and saying, listen, I understand Cheetos, hot fries, all those things, but guess what? My workout plan is not going to change you because that habit is still there. James Clear says in Atomic Habits, great book, by the way. He says, habits will form whether you want them to or not. Habits create sustainability. So whether it's a good habit or a bad habit, your brain does not care. All your brain is thinking about is, we feel safe. This is comfortable. And guess what? The habit is now there and you didn't even realize it. Another crazy thing to think about habits, they're compounding. So whether it be good or bad, your brain will continue to search for that. Your brain loves that state of comfort. So if it's bad and you keep doing it, it will continue to stack itself onto it. If it's good, it will do the same thing. So you're now if I'm in your head and I got your gears turning, hopefully I do. How do they get there? People, places, and emotions. Again, people, places, and emotions. Because one of those three things is satisfying one of your cravings. You have a craving that's so deep that your body's like, we got to have it. So that's what you end up doing. I ain't perfect. I'm on here because I'm learning too. So for me to learn, one thing that Allison had to kick and scream and drag me kicking and screaming was, we started 75 hard. And when she first said that, I said, that's close to 100 and that's a lot of workouts. I'm not doing that. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm so happy I did. I'm tired, but I'm so happy I did because I did not have great habits. I had habits that I was happy that I did, but they weren't sustainable. 75 hard, if you don't know, let me give you a little bit of background. It's 75 days straight, no break, of a workout inside, a workout outside. This is all on the same day. A gallon of water, no cheat meal, a diet plan, read 10 pages. Got to do that every day. And so for me, one of the things that I set in place was I want to write 150 words for my dissertation because I was writing at all times through the night. And it was affecting not only me, but it was affecting my family. I wasn't engaged with Serena when she was playing. I wasn't able to help Allison when she needed the help. So I gave myself a word count that can help me create a more sustainable and balanced habit. When you think about your habit, understand the first thing you need to do is evaluate that habit. Also in the book Atomic Habits, he says, you should determine if that habit is helping you or hurting you. Is it taking away from you or is it adding to you? That's one of the things that I think we overlook. For example, everybody has this. What was your goal at the beginning of this year? Now that we're at the halfway point of the year, what was it? Are you closer to it or are you even further away from it? Because your habit is doing one of the other. It's either moving you in a direction you're proud of and it's something you want to do, or it's moving you away from that. Like I said earlier, our habits are compounding. They are something that our brain is doing with our permission or without it. So if it's something that is beneficial, that compounding feeling, that dopamine will continue to go in that direction. But the same can also be said for something that is bad. When you look at those habits, where are you stacking them more towards? The good or the bad? And also having a plan. So for me, it's the 75 hard. And it's a plan that I can follow every day and make sure I have actionable steps to make sure I can do them. So consider those factors that are in your life that influence you because they're either moving you towards them or not. Think about it like this. You're out with a group of friends and your friends say, hey, let's go to the bar. And you're trying to lose weight and you're trying to change your life. Are you going for the fellowship and you can say no to certain drinks? Or are you going to fit in and you know you shouldn't do it and you're still going to do it anyway? Those are both habits. So understanding how we're compounding the habit will affect us in the process. One thing I don't think people stress enough about our habits is your habits and your goals are closely related. I heard this one time and someone said, if you show me your friends, I'll show you your destination in life. Our habits are no different. Our goals and habits are often related. Your goals that you had at the beginning of the year, are you closer to them or are you further away from them? What habits have you put in place to make sure it's attainable? We set goals to change our habits. So we have to set these goals in place to make you move in a spot that will help you be something different, will help you understand, oh, I don't like when I'm trying to lose weight, but I'm buying these things in my pantry. And guess what? When you get snacky, that's where you go. That habit is no longer helping you. As I said earlier, your habit is satisfying a craving. So when you think about that craving, what is it? What's deep down inside that habit was created on? Is it success? Your continual development? Growth? Is it something in your family? What is it? One cool habit that I had the chance to witness was Allison. Every morning she drinks her juice and she always puts caffeine in it. And for her putting caffeine in it, she knows how much caffeine she needs to put in there. She knows it can get her through her day with no crash at all. When she first started drinking caffeine, she was drinking all different kinds of brands. She was having midday crashes. She knew she needed it, but she didn't understand how to use it properly. Are you like that today? Are some of your habits in the way of getting you to where you have to go? Because in order to achieve our goals, we don't have to always create a new pathway. Sometimes we just have to adjust it a little bit, move some things around, because your habit may not be flawed, but the purpose might need to change. So once you adjust it a little bit, now guess what? You've given that new habit some meaning. You can now put yourself in a direction where it's not changing you too much. One way I like to think about it is, say you're working so hard right now for a promotion, just doing a little bit more, making some adjustments, you're the next up for that raise, that recognition that you've earned. But guess what? There's that one coworker at work that just gets on your last nerves. You can't stand them. And so because you can't stand them and you ain't trying to have anything go crazy, you just ignore them. Very small talk. Hi, bye, that's it. But in doing that, guess what you have created the habit of? Avoidance. And now because you have this avoidance-like demeanor, guess who's starting to talk? Guess what's starting to buzz around the office? So even though you're probably one of the hardest workers, you've now worked yourself out of recognition because of a habit of avoidance. So making a small adjustment and saying, hello, how was your weekend? Or at least even asking them for help now puts you in a better situation where those rumors don't float around and you're being looked at differently. What we have to learn about habits and creating newer ones are, we cannot be afraid to step outside of comfort zones. If you're thinking about becoming a leader, becoming new, changing your situation and your surroundings, it's going to require you to be a little uncomfortable. One of the things I fell in love with as a coach was I knew athletes wanted to win and they had that burning desire to do that. And so it was really easy for me to convince them to say, well, how bad are you willing to hurt for it? Because I knew it was going to be uncomfortable and it was going to be painful at some times. Changing and becoming a new person is no different. It's going to have some discomfort behind it because it's asking you to be new. Forming new habits tend to be challenging because we're not comfortable with new. So what are some of those habits for you that you know you need to change, that you know are holding you back? What do you need to change? You might be thinking to yourself, well, I know I want to change the habit. I know the habit I need to change. Take, for example, smoking or just scrolling on social media. You know that's your bad habit and you have the good intentions behind it. And you're telling yourself, well, how do I change it? Instead of asking yourself, how do I change it? Why do I change it? Let's ask a deeper level of a question. What is the reason you want to change it? What is it that's hindering you from stepping out and becoming new? See, because now that you're asking yourself a deeper level of a question, now you're going to have to answer it because you're going to find the truth. But if you just give an excuse like, oh, it's just hard, or because of my situation, then guess what? We'll continue to repeat the same things that have been weighing us down forever. So we have to set goals to change our habits. And knowing that once we set the goal, there will be discomfort. There will be times of just pain because that is required. When we're talking about becoming new, we first have to understand, where did that old habit come from? So we have to understand the roots of what's going on, because a lot of times we want to create a new habit, but we don't even understand why the old habit got here. If you've been listening to me through social media, you're a former athlete that's worked with me, you know where I'm coming from. Why I breathe is to help people think outside the box, to understand how we can create newer habits. And to be honest with you, as a coach, that should be every coach's number one philosophy, because without change, we're going to have a losing season. And if we have a losing season, you're going to get fired. So we can't do that. So we're always trying to change habits. Let me give you an example of how something can get rooted. Did you grow up in a household where cursing was the norm? Your parents cursed at each other, cursing at relatives was just always out there. So guess what? Now that you hear so much of it, and it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, but you just hear it so much, it becomes the norm. Now that you're older, you have your family, you're in your situation, guess what you're doing? You're repeating the same things. I've had so many friends tell me, I want to be different than my mom and dad. And then guess what? When they become parents, or when they get put in a very similar situation, guess what they end up doing? The same exact things they hated. Why? Because it was the norm. And they are not understanding they have to change those thoughts first. They have to look at them differently, because that's where the growth is going to happen. But if you're just trying to put growth on something you don't even understand yet, it ain't happening. Here's another example for you, because it might not be hitting you yet. What if you're that type of person, you're saying, I ain't never going to show up late to a meeting. I'm going to be there 10 minutes ahead of time because I don't want to be in trouble. Guess what that is? A habit, because you probably were in trouble. You probably were the one that got caught. Those two examples are how small they are, and you don't even realize how they now become you today. One thing you can do by the end of today, when you listen to this, are think of 3 good habits, and then think of 3 bad habits that you have. And trust me, I'm being nice by saying 3 and 3. We got a lot more than that. And if you're trying to tell me right now you don't, that's one right there. But anyways, list them out. Because once you can list them out, now look at that list and say, which one of these habits are helping me? And which one of these habits are hurting me? Because I'm going to give you a secret. Even the habits that we say are good can still be made out of hurt. Now that we see our list, we can now evaluate our list and say what needs to be changed. Why was that put there in the first place? And now that you've changed it, you can now start living with purpose. You can now start putting meaning behind becoming a new person. The thing we have to understand about our habits is when they're negative, they're going to continue to go and dig deeper. So we have to work really hard to get to that root, because once we can get to that root, we know we can kill it off. And then we can start actually creating a positive foundation. Because the thing that I try to stress to people all the time is that how we look at it is where you're going to go. Your perspective is the number one thing you are in control of. And your habits literally attach themselves to that. Habits grow so fast that we don't even understand how fast they grow. It's now being proven that, they say it takes 21 days to create a habit. Actually, yes, that's on the quicker end. But on average, it takes 66 days. So if you have something about you can't stand, it took 66 days to do that. And now you've probably been living like that for years, putting people through that same situation for years. Something that you're ashamed of took 66 days, and it's now 20 years later. What are those things? As I said earlier, for me, doing the 75 hard has been great because it's put me in a situation where I'm face to face with creating a new habit every day. And literally, it's asking me, how do you feel about this habit? Did you do it? How did you feel about this habit? Did you do it? And it's 75 days. So I have to be planning. I have to be diligent. I have to be consistent in order to see the progress take shape. Now, I know I've given you a lot, but I ain't going to leave you like that because I'm not that kind of guy. So here are 3 things that can help you have better habits. Number 1, we have to make the new habit attractive. I have seen so many people say, I'm going to lose weight. And guess what they do? They go to the gym the next day and they do all the machines. They do everything they said they didn't do. They did. And guess what? They can't walk. They're sore for weeks. They feel miserable and they don't go back to the gym because what they were doing was trying to change it overnight. They weren't trying to make the habit attractive. If you're trying to lose weight, what's an exercise that you like? Then go to the gym and see if you can do it. Number 2, take small steps. When we think about habits, it's either all or none. And we put so much pressure on ourselves to say, I know these 3 things I don't like, so I'm going to change them now. Or when we don't see them change, we get upset. Those habits took a long time to form. So it's going to take a long time to change them. But if you look at it that way, why on earth would you put that much effort into it? So you have to put small steps behind it because now it's achievable. One of the coolest things I've ever heard, and truly the reason I am walking across the stage for my PhD is I heard someone say, if you want to be a writer, write a sentence. The first ever paper I wrote, I was so nervous. I was suffering from imposter syndrome. I didn't believe it was me. And I just remember, write a sentence. Write a sentence. If you're trying to change the way you think one thought differently. If you're trying to change how you eat one less. It just takes one step, and now you can build on that. Allison came to me at the beginning of the year, and she said, I want to run a 5K. And in her saying that, I said, oh, okay, cool. She never talks to me about advice on working out, so I didn't give her no advice on this. She was just like, I want to run a 5K. I was like, okay, I ain't doing it, but go ahead. So anyways, she started, so we said, hey, just walk. So for the first month and a half, all she did was walk. Think about that. I want to run a 5K, and for a month and a half, all she did was walk. And then she started jogging to the stop signs. Then it became jog for 20 seconds. She was willing to take small steps. Number 3, identify yourself with the habit. We need to understand that if you don't identify yourself with the habit, you will not create a new habit. For example, I love any Miami team. I love the Miami Heat. I love the Miami Dolphins. And guess what? When it's those seasons, I love those teams. So I'm a Miami fan. You hear that? I'm identifying myself with the team. The habit is no different. Allison, again, she's now running, and a neighbor saw her running in the complex, and he said, "You're doing great, runner. Keep it up." And she said, "I'm not a runner." And guess what? The next day she was running again, and the same person saw her and said, "I thought you said you weren't a runner." She came home and told me that story, and she said, "I guess I'm a runner now." Identify yourself with the habit. So if you want to be a writer and write a sentence. If you want to lose the weight, be a gym goer and go for one thing. Identifying yourself with the habit makes the habit more obtainable. It makes it real. I hope we gave you something today that made you change your mind, made you look at habits a little differently. If you'd like to hear a little bit more, please follow Mental Max Out, the podcast, on any social media platform. I'm always excited to give you something new because I want you to step outside the box. Because what's important to me is not having you think like me, but having you think differently.